Thanks again for your patience and welcome everybody. Today we've got Manufacture Your Future. So this is obviously powered by riteSCAN and Syspro, and the idea here is to look at what the future holds in the paperless warehouse. So without further ado, we'll get started and we will just run through some initial housekeeping and we'll run through some introductions as well before we get into things. So today we've got a couple of very special guests. People will probably know some of those, some of the names I say today, but from riteSoft, we're very lucky to have Ryan Winiky, who is the riteSoft product manager. Now, he's been with riteSoft for quite some time, and he is going to guide us through some of the things that we covered today in the paperless warehouse, and he'll also run through a demo. From the Cispro side of things, we've got Jake Mantle, which I'm sure many people have heard his name by now or are aware of. He's been with Cispro for 27 years, so he's still new to all of this, so give him a chance, I beg you. But he's the solution director from Cispro, and he'll be assisting us today. And of course, my name's Andrew Farrar. I am the strategic accounts director and the voice of just the intro here. So I'll kick it over to the other guys who know a hell of a lot more than I do in this space. But we'll be covering the paperless warehouse and how, really automation and optimizations are becoming just true basic necessities of any warehouse environment. From there, we'll cut over to a live demo and Ryan will walk us through again what this looks like in riteSoft, and we'll hold all the questions to the end if we can. You're welcome to put them in the chat as always. So put your questions in the chat and we'll cover them off on the other side of that demo in a Q&A session. So I suppose you're probably thinking, what are we going to expect from this warehouse demonstration? What's riteSoft got for us today? So the idea here is to increase efficiency and make sure that you've got better visibility over the warehouse, looking for improvements in productivity and customer service, really getting and taking advantage of that real-time information that you'll get from riteSoft and Cispro. And then from there, we'll look at how to play Tetris with your warehouse. So a better use of your space and the safety around that. The reduced paperwork is obviously a huge benefit, both for the environment and the operational and labor costs. And of course, from there, we'll look at the reduction in any duplication and errors, increasing your data integrity, which is always helpful when making business decisions. And of course, as mentioned before, that environmental footprint is going to be reduced. So the first presenter here we've got today is Jake Mantle. As mentioned, he's Cispro family. Like I said, he's new to the gig, so give him a chance after 27 years, but I'll throw it over to you, Jakes.
Thank you, Andrew. Let's hope we manage to get through it without making any mistakes. Okay, to start your system in the current way we're working, okay, so we're looking at from the way we're currently producing sort of a mini factory process and the items that we normally cover through in the paper system. Okay, so normally in the back office, they will prepare a variety of warehouse transfers, job cards, picking slips, purchase orders. Now, invariably, there's 4 or 5 different copies of these that get printed, sorted, packed, sent out to different places throughout the factory. We all know customers come along and change things. Job card gets changed, picking slips need to be altered, and somebody has to run around and going and picking up all these pieces of paper, then reissuing the new ones and making sure that it all happens. Okay, so from a purchase order point of view, we always have a copy sitting out in our dispatch process or in our receiving area for the guys to be able to receive the items and tick them off. When we receive the items, we print out a GRN, and in some cases 3 or 4 copies just in case it gets lost. And we then attach the supplier's delivery note, and we send this whole pile of papers in a batch form or in a folder or in a basket or in a trolley. It all depends on how many of these pieces of paper we have, up to the accounts department, and they go through and sift it and sort it and repack it, match it to the invoice. So it's quite a long, tedious process. Again, we're moving through the warehouse process. Any transfers that are done, we create a piece of paper in order to move that stuff from warehouse A to warehouse B. These pieces of paper invariably have a whole lot of information on them that needs to be updated or changed, if there's any change to any of the processes. If we've got jobs through the system, we've got job issue sheets going out. And again, all these pieces of paper have already been created by someone somewhere in the process. And if anything changes, again, out to the floor we go and fetch them, pick them up, change them, swap them out. Quite a bit of time getting wasted, never mind the paper that gets printed and thrown away. From a picking point of view, we've got a variety of picking slips. We print the picking slip, we go out, we confirm the picking. If there's any changes on the pick or the pick confirmation, we're going to go back, reprint the items, and then move it on into eventually we're getting out to dispatch the items. We get another piece of paper saying, here's the dispatch. We make sure that we get a variety of different delivery documents, a copy for the accounts department to file, and a whole lot of extra pieces of paper that are required in order to process it. Now, I know we've all suffered this process many, many times over, and a lot of time gets wasted through this process. Looking at the future, okay, so a paperless system with a mobile device. So going forward, we don't need to print a piece of paper to do our warehouse transfer. It's already sitting on a device. It's sitting on a screen for someone to pick up. The picking slips, the purchase orders, job cards, all of this is sitting already in electronic format on your current ERP system, Syspro. Why do we need to print a piece of paper? So with the paperless system, it's already there. So now when there's a change, it's instantly given to the person who's doing the picking or doing the process or the purchase order receipt. The GRN doesn't need to be printed. Okay, we can keep the supplies delivery note number, just write the GRN number on it and send that to accounts department to match it to the rest of the process. So in this case, we've saved 2 out of 3 of the pieces of paper. Our warehouse transfers, our job issues, no need to print them. We've got them on a screen. So in this case, we're saving 2 out of 2. From a picking slip or a picking confirmation process, again, because we can have it on a screen, easily updated, changed, real-time information, no need to print a piece of paper. So in this case, we're saving 2 of the 2 pieces of paper. From a dispatch note point of view, unfortunately, we still in some cases need to send a piece of paper out with our goods to our customer. So in this case, we're not managing to save any of the paperwork. But out of these 11 pieces of paper, we've managed to save 10. Now, the 10 pieces of paper are really nothing. It's the time that is being saved from this point, okay? And the real-time data that's been fed back to the operations. Moving forward, I'm going to hand over to Ryan, and he's going to take you through the process using the riteSoft solution to the paperless warehouse. Ryan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jakes, and thanks for having me, everyone, today. So as Jakes has been discussing some of the outcomes to expect in moving towards a paperless warehouse environment, we also want to just spend a little bit of time talking how is riteSCAN going to assist you in going through that digital warehouse transformation, and really what does that look like within your organization. So as we go through that, we also want to talk about the topic that has impacted organizations throughout the world and how it relates to today's discussion of a paperless warehouse. COVID-19 has created massive disruption across the globe, and really the fallout from COVID-19 has impacted every market force from financial to cultural, legal, political, and technological. The pandemic has really created both demand and supply chain shocks, and all of this impacts the market, your company, your competitors as well. And researchers will be studying for the social and economic impacts of this pandemic for quite some time. The bigger question I think that everybody has on their mind and in their organization is, what is this new normal going to be and how are we going to react to it? And that's what we want to talk about. And according to PwC's Global Crisis Center, most crises require short-term reactions around mobilization, medium-term stabilization efforts, and strategizing for the long-term and a permanent transformation. However, we also believe that manufacturers should strategize now on how they can transform and position their organization in ways that will give them a competitive advantage and actually help create greater resilience in a post-crisis world. And this ought to be done on the heels of the disruption throughout the crisis and during the recovery phases of this. And this might seem like a lot to ask of organizations as each manufacturing sector faces its own stiff headwinds. Indeed, according to a recent PwC survey, 74% of CFOs at US industrial product companies agreed that COVID-19 has the potential to significantly impact their business and causes great concern within their organization. And that's a fear factor that kind of stems your whole organization. So we also want to talk, while the pandemic is driving a considerable disruption, there are also a lot of other significant reasons to embrace this digital transformation, as Jakes was talking about. And there are a number of costs in your organization that often go overlooked when it comes to inventory management. The first one we really want to talk about is the errors. Manual data entry often results in incorrect inventory information. We're all familiar with those paper timesheets and trying to read somebody's handwriting as it's being entered into Cispro. So we all are familiar with that. And on average, humans make one error for every 300 characters that are being manually typed in. And this is what really leads to inaccurate inventory levels. You have unnecessary reorders, potential stockouts, and that's all happening within your inventory. The second kind of key factor to keep in mind is the amount of time and money that it's costing your organization. Another drawback with this is the amount of time that it actually takes to enter the data manually. And in that time lag of accessing that updated information, you have issues. COVID-19 really illustrated exactly how important it is to be able to access that information in real time and trust your system. Accessing that information in real time is really critical to preventing disruptions within your supply chain and your inventory within your organization. So the third kind of key factor from a cost perspective that goes into this is your warehousing costs. Ultimately, we all know that space is important, right? We're trying to do more with less. Ultimately, inventory inaccuracies are going to bloat your inventory levels and increase your warehouse space requirements. And this really ties up capital and impacts your ability as an organization to innovate and grow your business, especially in today's market where it's a very competitive global market and we want to do as much as we can in our organization. The last factor, which often goes overlooked in some cases as to how important of a factor this is customer and employee satisfaction. The inaccuracies inherent in manual inventories can lead to those stockouts and mispicks, and this actually is turning into unhappy customers and frustrated employees. So think about this for a minute in your organization. If you're not confident in the accuracy of your inventory in your system, your customer service staff, for example, they may have to run down to the warehouse or call out to the warehouse just to check inventory and bother that person in the warehouse to see if there's availability. And this really increases your labor costs and your overhead within your organization just to process an order. The flip side of that is the mispick side of it, so sending out an order. Mispicks impact your customer satisfaction tremendously, and according to a study by Intermec in 2012, just a single mispick costs on average a warehouse about $22 on average. And that might not seem like a lot, but over the course of a year, it can really add up within a warehouse. The survey indicated that the cost of mispicks in a single distribution center can cost on average about $389,000 a year. And at the end of the day, all of these issues that can be preventable can impact your bottom line and are going to impact your bottom line. So that's where we really come in, and using a simple warehouse solution with barcode technology is what's going to help you eliminate those mistakes, prevent those mispicks, improve your lot traceability throughout your organization, and really help streamline your inventory and warehouse processes as a whole. So that's really what leads us into our discussion today on how is riteSCAN going to help you go digital and optimize your warehouse and inventory. So riteSCAN is used worldwide by about 2,400 users across 10 countries, including the Asia Pacific region. And we really work in a variety of different verticals, from food and beverage to textiles, equipment, supplies, biomedical, machine manufacturing, and many other industries as well. So riteSCAN is actually developed by RiteSoft. We're based out of the US, and we focus specifically on developing software solutions that integrate with Cispro to help automate those data collection processes for manufacturers and distributors in the Cispro space. RiteSoft also really focuses on delivering solutions what we coin the right way, through really focusing on reliability, ingenuity, and simplicity for those operators that are using our solutions day in and day out in the warehouse.
Sorry, Ron, just to interrupt you. We've worked together hand in hand for the last 5 years or so. Now, normally we've only been focusing in the Australian region. I'm assuming RiteSoft caters for additional languages like Chinese and can be sold in the Asia Pacific market.
Yeah, definitely. So we actually have a couple of customers in China, and we also support other languages with riteSCAN, including simplified Chinese within the application as well. So definitely. So going on, we want to talk about where is riteSCAN used, and it's really used in a variety of your different processes within your operations, from material issues for manufacturing to receiving and order picking, along with just your day-to-day inventory movements. The benefit of riteSCAN is that it brings the point of data capture as close to the actual occurrence or the physical transaction that's happening on the warehouse floor. And the benefit of this is providing that real-time data into your ERP that's validated upon each transaction in the warehouse floor. And this is what's really going to lead you to trustworthy, accurate data within your Cispro and inventory environment. So when we talk about the product, I really like to break it into these three sort of categories of modules that are offered. The first one we want to really focus in on is inventory. And this is anything from your day-to-day inventory transactions, or simply when you're standing in the middle of the warehouse, being able to do an inventory query to see where a stock code or a lot number might be within your warehouse without having to go to a terminal that's way on the other side. You have that mobility and visibility into your inventory in real time. The other key factors in the inventory modules is anything for your stock takes or cycle counts, and being able to automate those processes. If you've done the manual process with stock take, you know that automating this can really help streamline that. The other side that we want to talk about is the order side. And this is really goes from your receiving, and receiving is where it really starts. So being able to perform that PO receipt in a paperless environment, as Jake's mentioned, without needing all of those documents that need to be printed off and handed out and passed off to the front office to be entered at a later point in time with that data lag. riteSCAN's receiving is going to allow you to quickly receive that information into your inventory, print what's required, or just write down what's required from a GRN perspective, automate your label printing if you haven't done that as well. On the flip side, from an order picking perspective or order processing perspective, you have your sales orders that are going out the door, and being able to optimize that sales order picking process through paperless environments, and being able to automate that pick list for those operators to pick those orders. The last sort of segment that we talk about is the manufacturing modules, and this is where it goes from anything to issuing materials to a job based on your bill of materials, along with performing job receipts and automating your label printing through there as well, with that being said.
Ryan, just before you move off that slide, can you just talk to us a little bit more about the pallet tracking?
Yeah, so we also have additional add-on features within riteSCAN, and pallet tracking being one of those. So what pallet tracking is, it's also known as license plating, but really what it comes down to is a method used to group and manage your inventory items at that pallet or some sort of common container level. Pallet tracking is really what's going to provide you the ability to more easily and rapidly move those items with fewer scans. And that's done so by grouping those items onto pallets or whatever sort of container unique identifier that you have. This way, the transactions can actually be performed with just a single process at that pallet level by being able to scan the pallet and perform a transaction. The other thing that riteSCAN gives you with pallet tracking is the ability to build or stage pallets. And you can do this whether it be moving it to a new warehouse, or you're staging a pallet of materials for a job, or you might be picking items for a sales order that you're picking to a common pallet that you're putting together for a customer. So there's a lot of different uses that pallet tracking can come into play within your warehouse as well. Good there. So the other thing with riteSCAN that it's going to really help you guys do is go from a labor-intensive, inaccurate manual data entry processes to quickly using barcode scans, and that's what's going to capture the data and send that information to Cispro immediately. So riteSCAN does this through the use of Cispro's E.net business objects, and this is really what provides us a truly seamless integration to Cispro. So what this really means for your organization is you no longer have to wait for the data to be manually entered into Cispro. As soon as somebody performs a transaction in the warehouse, that data is captured at the same time and reflected in Cispro. The other benefit to that is you guys spend a lot of time building logic into your Cispro environment and rules and all of that. And the benefit of using those E.net business objects is a lot of that logic carries down to the riteSCAN transactions as well. So for example, if I set up my Cispro warehouse to not allow a specific warehouse to go negative for stock, that error is going to come through in real time to the user if they try to perform a transaction that would cause that warehouse to go negative for that stock code specifically. And this is really what helps eliminate those scavenger hunts that you might have to go on, whether it's a day later or a week later, trying to find what happened to our inventory, why did we send the wrong product, or why is this inventory off? And this is really what's going to help you guys result in more efficient and accurate inventory processes as a whole.
Sorry, Ron, just got two questions for you. First one would be, does the Cispro customer have to buy any additional Cispro modules? And the second question is, how does the integration between riteSCAN and Cispro work? Is it real time? Is it cradle dump? If you can just explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so to answer the first question, so the customer just has to have the E.net module with Cispro, and the business objects are included with the purchase of riteSCAN. So as far as what you need is basically just to have that E.net module, and then with riteSCAN, you're going to get the ability to use all those business objects. As far as how the integration works, so it's not a cradle dump, it's not a sync at some point. Cispro is really your system of record. So basically what that means is there's only one system of record, and that's Cispro. All the transactions that are performed are in real time. So what that means is riteSCAN is going to validate that transaction with Cispro. As soon as I perform it through riteSCAN and I see a post successful in riteSCAN, I can go take a look in Cispro, and you're going to see that as well. And I'll show you guys that in just a few minutes as well, as to how I can perform those transactions and immediately see those results in Cispro. So riteSCAN is also going to help you receive, move, pick orders, all of that more accurately, and do it through real time. And one of the example of this is through the data validation. And data validation really begins with the use of barcodes and labels, along with label printing automation throughout your warehouse operations. Barcodes is what's really going to help prevent a lot of those mispicks, and it's going to give all the information that's necessary to validate. For example, you're going to have your stock code, your locations, lot numbers, serial numbers, all of that information can be barcoded to simply scan that and validate that information. So there's no mistakes. Did I accidentally pick a pink one versus a red one? It's validating that stock code information in real time to make sure the operator grabs the correct item, the correct quantities, the correct lot numbers, and so on. And this is what's really going to improve operators' performance as well as picking accuracy. Sales order picking is a really big component, and given the high costs of mispicks, it's really no wonder that a lot of companies have adopted what's called the perfect order metric as a KPI. Really what this means is the orders delivered on time, complete, damage-free with accurate documentation. And a lot of companies are really measuring this for a lot of good reasons. What riteSCAN is going to do is riteSCAN is going to help you achieve a higher perfect order metric. And that's through data validation and label printing automation, along with different Smartscan capabilities that riteSCAN can offer from a picking perspective as well.
So Ron, if you just go into a little bit more details on the Smartscan, does that mean I can scan the label that's on the screen 3 times and get 3 different informations, 3 different types of information out of it? Or, you know, how does it work?
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with barcodes, so what you see on screen here is what's called a 2D barcode. So riteSCAN works with a number of different barcodes along with the different handheld devices depending on their requirements. So what you see on screen is a 2D barcode, and one of the features within riteSCAN is a feature called Smartscan. And really what that does, allows you to utilize those types of barcodes. So you'll see here that barcode actually contains the stock code lot 100. The lot number is 10203, and there's a quantity of 100 for that. So within that single barcode, it actually has all 3 pieces of those data. And within riteSCAN, when I scan that barcode, Smartscan is going to allow me to automatically parse that data and know where to put it appropriately within the transaction. So that way, from an operator scanning, all they have to do is scan that single barcode, and riteSCAN is going to parse that out. And it really reduces and streamlines that effort from an operator perspective by only having to scan 1 barcode with all 3 pieces of that data.
So Ron, if I take that you're telling me, the customer or the lot number or the barcode will pick the number up automatically, so they won't have to type in any additional information?
Yeah, exactly. And that's really what it's all about, is trying to streamline everything to as much barcode scanning as possible. So for example, in what you just mentioned, they're not going to have to type anything in. All of the information that's required to perform that transaction, the stock code, the lot number, the quantity, is all in that single barcode that's required. So the operator just scans that 1 barcode to perform the transaction.
Now, Ryan, earlier you spoke about printing labels. Does riteSCAN have its own label printer? How does the label printing work?
Yeah, so what riteSCAN does is we actually automate label printing through the use of other label printing designers and automation services like Bartender or Nice Label. So with riteSCAN, what you're going to be able to do is automate those label printing processes, whether it's a PO receipt when I receive, you know, the specific stock code. riteSCAN is going to feed all of that required data to whatever solution you're using for label printing, whether it be Bartender, Nice Label, or many others that we can work with as well. And it's going to automatically print those labels for the transaction that I just performed. So that's the way that riteSCAN works, and that allows you the flexibility to choose what information you need to print on those labels and really have flexibility from a design perspective to define what do I want on my labels, what do I want from a barcode perspective, what do I want our users or customers to be able to see as well. So the market is really changing for software and hardware devices over the last couple of years, and among many industries, manufacturing really is no exception to this. With the sunset of Windows Mobile, Microsoft announced the sunset of Windows Mobile at the end of 2019. So the market is really transitioning from a handheld or rugged device perspective, and they're going to these Android mobile devices that are more cost effective and, to be honest, offer a lot more functionality for the cost that they're providing. So more than 1/2 of the devices from both Honeywell and Cispro, which are your 2 main suppliers of ruggedized handhelds, are shipping with the Android operating system. And Android really provides end customers with improved devices, the flexibility of the devices, and just the overall usability as well. And with all of these enhancements, riteSCAN is able to enhance our products as well, along with that Android platform. So we've been using Android now for about 2 years. We also support the Windows mobile platforms along with Windows clients, so you can use it on a number of different devices. But riteSCAN's Android version is also going to give you some benefits from a workflow perspective and really help optimize and streamline some of those processes within your organization.
All right, so what if I'm reading between the lines here, I don't have to have a rugged device in order to use riteSCAN.
Definitely correct. So customers use a wide range of devices, whether it's a handheld scanner like the two on the left in the image there. We also have a number of customers that are using a tablet. They're using tablets with just a little Bluetooth barcode scanner. There's a lot of different deployments that you can do from a hardware perspective to fit your environment, to fit your budget, and fit your processes that you're trying to implement as well. So definitely you can use it on a tablet device as well.
So Ryan, does that restrict me to having the latest device, or can I use older devices?
So you can use a number of different devices from an Android perspective. You can use some of those older devices. So here's a good example actually. Some of our customers, when they're doing a stock take, they're bringing in a lot of additional people to help with that annual stock take at the end of the year, and they need to bring on additional devices to help automate that. So a lot of times companies, they have additional Android tablets or different devices that were laying around, or just end users that have their own Android phone. They can bring it in and utilize riteSCAN on that device to actually help automate their stock take process, and just use that tablet or phone device actually to capture some of that data in the stock take processes as well.
So Ryan, what you're saying to me is there's a whole new meaning to your company mobile phone. It can be the scanning solution too.
There definitely is, yes. All right, well with that, what we're gonna actually transition into is the product demo. So we'll spend about 15 minutes and go through some of the different transactions in the product demo. I'm gonna be using an Android device. So while I do that, I'm just gonna transition my screen here, which will just take a moment. Give me just a second here. Jakes, are you able to see the Android screen showing up now?
Yes, it has appeared.
Perfect. So I'm using a handheld today just to kind of go through this demo. This is an Android handheld device. So you'll be seeing me going through this emulator. You can use riteSCAN on a number of other devices, whether it's a Windows mobile device if you have some already. We have a number of customers that will use the Windows client with a tethered barcode scanner, for example, at PO receiving. That's an often use case that customers will use that piece or Windows client with just a tethered or Bluetooth scanner. So there's a number of varieties that you can use riteSCAN to really help go to a paperless warehouse environment and utilize these devices to really bring mobility to your warehouse and bring a streamlined, simple solution for operators to perform those transactions in real time with Cispro. So the first thing you're going to notice on the screen here is I'm actually able to set up my login, and I'm logging in with my Cispro operator ID. And one of the benefits of this is this really gives me the visibility to see those transactions, see who performed them in Cispro, because I'm actually using my Cispro operator. All that's passing through to Cispro in real time. If I have multiple companies, you'll see that I can log into those multiple companies. I'm going to be logging into company 1 today as we go through this. So I'm going to go ahead and just log into the system. And the first thing you're going to notice on my screen when I log in is I'm going to have my inventory tab. So we're going to spend a little bit of time just kind of walking through inventory here. And in my demo, I'm actually using a multi-bin Cispro environment. So if you're not using multi-bin or you're turning it on along with lot traceability, riteSCAN's always communicating with Cispro in real time. So one of the benefits you get from that is if I'm not multi-bin, riteSCAN's going to know not to ask for that information. If tomorrow I turn on multiple bins in my Cispro environment, riteSCAN's going to know that it has to ask for that information. Everything's communicating in real time from that perspective. So we're going to go into an inventory query here. And the first thing you're going to notice is that riteSCAN's going to load a list of all of my available stock codes. So if I don't know the stock code that I want to look up, if I don't know the code for sure, I can start to type this in, and riteSCAN's going to help filter that list down. And then I can select it from my list, and it's going to show me all of my inventory information in real time. So I'm going to see at all the warehouses that I have access to as a user. That comes directly from your Cispro operator setup. You'll notice in here, if I wanted to view details about this, I can drill into those details. If I wanted to look at this from a bin perspective, I can also take a look at a bin perspective, and this is going to show me all of my bins. If I needed to sort or filter this list, maybe I want to sort by show me the bin that has the most quantity in it first. I can sort that list, and riteSCAN is going to retain that information. Now, if I want to take a look at a lot traceable stock code, because I'm a lot traceable company and most of my stock codes are lot traceable, you can also scan that information. And when I scan that, riteSCAN is going to validate it and look it up for me automatically versus having to filter through the list. But you'll also notice I now have a tab for lots. So I can actually drill into my warehouse, my bins, just like before, and I can drill into my lots and I can view even more details about those lots on here as well. So it really gives you that flexibility to real-time information. If I go look in Cispro, I'm going to see that exact same inventory information. And the benefit to this is, as an operator, if I'm standing out in the warehouse, in the middle of the warehouse, I can simply look through my handheld to find where do I need to look for my inventory, or where do I find this stock code. Versus maybe having to go all the way back to the front of the warehouse to find a PC and look that information up. I have access to that right at my fingertips. You also have the ability to look at this from a bin perspective. So if I wanted to do a bin query to see specifically what do I have in my bin location in this warehouse, so maybe it's your top rack of your warehouse, and rather than pulling that pallet down to see what's all up there, I can just simply scan my bin tag, and riteSCAN is going to show me what do I have in that bin. In this case, I just have one stock code. If you store multiple stock codes in a bin, you'd be able to see that information as well. So it's going to give you all of that in real time. With that being said, the next sort of transaction we're going to take a look at is automating your stock take process. So this is one of the best ways to get an ROI on your investment, because riteSCAN stock take and automating that data capture is going to save you a tremendous amount of time in manual data entry with your stock take processes, and reading handwriting from the tickets that people wrote down their counts on and trying to enter that information in at a later point in time. So riteSCAN works directly with Syspro's stock take system. What this means is I've set up a stock take in Cispro. I'm able to go ahead and scan my warehouse that I'm counting. You'll notice it gave me the bin field because I'm actually a multi-bin warehouse. And then I can go ahead and scan or look up my stock code to count at this point in time. I'm going to go ahead and scan my stock code. If I don't have my quantity bar-coded, I can actually just enter it here. So we performed the count and we counted 10 in this location, and I can post that, and that's going to post directly into Syspro's stock take system. Now, this isn't going to make the adjustment to inventory. This is just going to simply perform those counts and send that information into Cispro. So you could have one person out there on the floor counting, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people counting. All that data is being fed back into Cispro directly at that point in time. Some people like to automate a print at this time or put their sticker on it after they perform the count. You can do that as well. You'll notice this little barcode at the top of my handheld here, and this is a feature called Smartscan. So what Smartscan is going to allow you to do in this sort of sense is, if I wanted to automate my Smartscan where I have multiple pieces of data in a single barcode, I can just quickly scan that barcode, and riteSCAN is going to parse that information apart for me. And I'll show you that in just a bit here as well, where you can see Smartscan in action. So the next sort of inventory transaction that you might do on a day-to-day basis is your warehouse transfer. If it's immediate, or if you guys use supply chain transfers, goods in transit, there's a number of ways. We're going to just take a look at an immediate warehouse transfer, and you'll notice that I actually have Smartscan on here. So with Smartscan on at this point in time, this is going to allow you to simply scan that 2D barcode. So I have a 2D barcode that contains multiple pieces of data. You'll notice that it just placed that stock code and that quantity in there for me. And now what I can do is simply just put in my warehouse that I'm moving it from, my bin location. You'll notice these browse buttons. So if I didn't necessarily know this information, I can also look this information up, and riteSCAN is going to quickly show me all of that information on where I might want to move it from. So we're going to move it from bin location E200, and we're going to go to warehouse FG, bin location FG500. You'll also notice this reference field, and I've specifically set up my reference field to automatically populate with RS for riteSCAN and the operator's information. So when I look in Cispro and I look at a movement transaction, I'm going to be able to see specifically that this transaction happened through riteSCAN with the Cispro administrator operators. So we just posted that transaction. I'm just going to go ahead and show you now in Cispro when we take a look at this inventory query and see what we see at this point in time. So we're going to go ahead and go into our stock code A100. And when we take a look at this, you're going to see that transaction that I just performed, moving it out of warehouse E and moved into warehouse FG. Everything is real time with riteSCAN, so it's going to validate that information. You'll also notice my reference over here, so I can see that it was performed in riteSCAN by operator Cispro administrator. That's what gives me that full visibility from a system perspective and full streamlined connection with Cispro. So we're going to take a look at the next sort of transaction with riteSCAN and go into that. So the next sort of transaction, one thing I should cover here, I apologize, is if I'm using pallets, I can also go into pallet mode. And what pallet mode is going to allow me to do is simply go through and actually scan the pallet ID versus having to put in that stock code information. So when I transition, I'm going to go into single pallet mode here and just show you guys quickly what that looks like at this perspective. So you're also going to be able to just simply scan your pallet ID. So when I go in here, I have a pallet that I've received into inventory. When I scan that, riteSCAN is going to know all of the information about that. So it's going to know all the stock codes that are on it, where it's located. It's in warehouse E, bin location A. So now from a workflow perspective, all I have to do is simply scan my warehouse I want to move it to, my bin location, and I can post that pallet information as well. Whether that pallet contains multiple stock codes or multiple items, it might contain multiple lot numbers with different quantities as well. It's going to bundle all that together with that unique identifier that riteSCAN knows. So another transaction we wanted to take a look at automating is the purchase order receiving. So for example here, if I have a purchase order, I can look this up with riteSCAN. So I'm going to see a list of all of my available purchase orders filtered down to the available ones to receive. If I have a document that already has this information on it, I can simply just scan my PO off of my document to receive. I can view all of the lines for this. What do I need that's outstanding still? If I want to receive one or multiple lines, you get to make that decision. So I'm going to go ahead and receive one of my lines from here. You'll notice that it defaulted my quantity, and because I'm multi-bin, it's also going to ask me to receive it into a bin. I'm going to receive it into my receiving bin because I'm actually going to perform a put away transaction in just a bit, putting it away from my receiving bin to its final bin destination as well. So we're going to go ahead and post this transaction. And that purchase order receipt has been posted to Syspro. If I wanted to print or generate that GRN for the operator to write down, I can do that as well. A lot of customers will print it on just a little 1x4 label and just stick that on the paperwork that gets handed in at that perspective. So now that I've performed that purchase order receipt for that line, I can actually go into my bin transfer module and perform a transfer what I just received at that point in time. So we're going to go ahead and scan our stock code information. We're going to put in our warehouse that we're receiving it from, and then our bin location was receiving. So now that I've put that information in, I can simply put it to my end destination of where I want to put this away in the inventory. We're going to go into bin location E100 and post that transaction, and that's going to update Cispro in real time. So the last sort of transaction that I want to go through to really look at how this is going to help you optimize and reduce paper or remove paper from your warehouse transactions is the order picking module. So within order picking, you can set this up to show specific orders with specific statuses. So for example, here, I'm looking at sales orders with a status 1, which you can sort by different parameters that are brought into riteSCAN. So you'll see this is my list of available orders. I can select it from the list. And what this is going to do is tell the operator, here's all the lines to pick from this perspective. So you're going to see what's outstanding, what bin location to pick that item from. If there's lots, you're going to be able to see what lot number you should be picking as well. So I'm going to go ahead with this, and I'm going to scan my first stock code that I should be picking. And riteSCAN is going to validate this information, and so it's not going to let the operator pick a stock code that they're not supposed to. If they tried to pick the red one versus the pink one, riteSCAN is going to tell them they scanned the wrong stock code. The same goes for setting different rules up on whether you allow them to over or under pick based on the outstanding quantity. So you can make all those decisions in your administrative setup on how you want to set up the workflow and the process. The other thing that I do from a workflow that I've set up with my riteSCAN system is once the operator begins the picking process, riteSCAN is going to update Cispro's sales order status to a status 4 in warehouse if I want to set it up to do that. And then I can also update a custom form field with the user that's actually picking this order, giving that customer service side the visibility into what's happening in the warehouse in real time. So if one of those sales orders changes in real time as they're picking it, they know who's picking that order. They can make that change, and it's going to be updated in riteSCAN as well when that operator is performing the pick in real time as well. All of that's communicating at the same time. So it's going to validate my bin location that I'm picking it from. I've defaulted my quantity to the outstanding, and I'm going to pick that, and it's going to go out of my list of items to pick. So I can go on to the next line as I'm picking it. I've sorted my list by bin location, so it's actually going to direct them in an alphanumeric sequence through my different bin locations. It's going to order those lines to pick based on that to help guide my operator through those picking options and make sure they're going to the next bin location in front of them. So we're going to go ahead and scan our bin location we're picking from and pick that line. You'll notice I can't complete this order. I've set up my system to not allow completing until the full pick is done. So now I have a lot traceable stock code. riteSCAN is actually going to also ask me for the lot number. So I'm going to select the bin that I'm picking it from and the lot number that I'm picking and go ahead and pick that. Now that I've picked all of those items, I'm able to complete this order. And in completing this order, riteSCAN is actually updating Cispro's sales order to a status 8, along with the information of who picked that order. So if we go take a look at that sales order now, let's do a sales order query to take a look at what just happened in riteSCAN and Cispro as well from a completely paperless perspective at this point in time. So if you see here, you're going to see that this sales order is now in a status of ready to invoice. You're going to see that all of these items have been picked from the correct bin locations and lot numbers. And you'll also notice on the custom form fields here, I've set up the picker information so I can see the user that actually picked this sales order, giving me complete visibility as well as accountability for this sales order and the information that was picked against it. All right, with that being said, I'm going to transition back here to the PowerPoint and transition it back to you, Jakes.
Awesome, thank you, Ryan. Great to see that riteSCAN and Cispro are working hand in hand, and it's real-time data. Just to continue the process that I was talking about earlier, where we had lots of pieces of paper moving around, a lot of people doing a variety of duplicated efforts. So the paperless warehouse and your ROI, your return on your investment. So if we run through just 6 of the basic items that we spoke about right at the beginning. So from a visibility point of view, we know we've got a 91% improvement on our visibility. We've reduced 91% of our paper sorting. So there's no more having to run around, sort out paper and make sure that everything is correct, because it's all now in an electronic form in Cispro in a single source. From a productivity point of view, because we don't have to have a whole variety of people doing things, building papers and sorting papers and moving stuff around, you've got an improved operational and allocation of your staff. So now people can do the job that they really meant to, and they can improve accuracy and improve the quality of what goes out to your customer. So on top of that, now we're getting better customer service, better picking processes, and ensuring that the goods that are leaving are the goods that the customer ordered. So again, saving money, saving time, saving unhappy customers. From a workflow point of view, it's a lot easier now to pick. If there's any changes, it's immediately on the device. And because all this information is real time, you don't have to do any staging, you don't have to do any double checking, saving time, saving money. From an environment point of view, we're not using nearly as much paper, so we're saving ink, we're not creating a whole pile of trash, so it's just a win-win for everyone. From a real-time information point of view, again, we've lost 10 out of the 11 pieces of paper. Ryan has taken you through the process where you can see exactly what Syspro's got is on the scanner. When the scanner does a process, it's immediately in Cispro. So you're getting real-time information, and the biggest benefit behind all of this is you've got a single source of the truth. Cispro is always correct. So thanks to you, Ryan, for taking us through that process, what riteSCAN to offer. And I'm now going to hand back to Andrew to work through some Q&A questions. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jakes. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Ryan, for walking through that demo with Jakes alongside asking some questions, and thank you for that at the end, Jakes. We have received a stack of questions throughout that, so I know a lot of our attendees are very excited and eager to hear some of the answers. Now, I am not going to go in any particular order, but real simple ones, I suppose. First off, Natalia is asking around cycle counting. Is the feature available in riteSCAN?
So my assumption is you're probably referring to the new cycle counting module with Syspro 8. And if that's the case, we're actually just about to release it. It came out of testing just this week, actually, that we're looking to release the cycle counting module for Syspro 8 with riteSCAN. So yes, it's not available yet today, but will definitely be available within the weeks here.
Fantastic, thank you for that. Harmony is asking, is it available on iPhone or iPad supported devices? There's a couple of questions around that, asking about iPhone or iPad devices.
Yep. So currently, it's only supported on Android devices at this point in time, but we're actually working, developing out a mobilely optimized web application as well for riteSCAN that we're working on from a development perspective. And that would actually also open the door from an iPhone or iPad perspective in supporting those devices. But currently, it's Android devices and Windows devices.
Fantastic, and I hope that answers your question to Justin surrounding that. Helen is asking, when receiving purchase orders, what about the freight allocation? So I suppose she's looking to get some better understanding around the freight allocation when doing those purchase orders.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways that customers do it for allocating freight, depending on your process flow and where you have that information and when you have access to that information. Some customers, if they have all of that information in the PO receiving process, they can actually account for freight. There's a lot of different settings from a costing perspective that you can incorporate. Within the riteSCAN module for receiving, there's also a cost apportionment, where you can apportion your freight at a different level perspective. Other times customers will do cost mods as well after the fact in Cispro. So they'll receive the inventory and then do the cost modification for freight later on, really depending on your process. But there's a lot of different costing information that goes into that in the receiving process that you can utilize to help build your workflow from a receiving standpoint in riteSCAN.
Great.
So.
Great, thank you. I hope that answers that question for you, Helen. Another question that is coming in from Justin is it leveraging Cispro workflows to access business objects? So Jax, that might be a question for you as well.
And to answer your question, it's actually not using the Cispro workflow at all. It's using our E.NET layer, and it's using the WCF service and direct communication to the business objects. So you don't need to have Cispro workflow.
Awesome, thank you very much. Natalia is also asking again, when would you like to perform a bin, when you would like to perform a bin transfer in riteSCAN, do you have to type the bin number or can you just scan it instead?
So the more scanning, the better. That's really what it comes down to. The more scanning you can do, the reduction of mistakes that can happen. So most customers, if you've implemented bins, or you might not have this today, but they'll actually barcode their bin locations throughout their warehouse. So all of their pallet racking locations, they'll have a big barcode on there with that bin. So the operator is actually able to scan that information. Yes, you can definitely enter it still, or you can browse like I showed you, but the more scanning, the better. And that's really what we try to strive for. As much scanning validation as we can implement into the workflows, that's what we're going to want to try to do.
Awesome, thank you. Robert is asking, what version of Android does it run?
I don't quote me on this, and I can definitely get back to you, but I believe it's on riteSCAN or Android version 5 and newer. And I can definitely send that as a follow-up, but I believe it's Android 5.0 or 5.1 and newer.
Okay, fantastic. And if you have several devices in use for picking, does it occupy a separate Cispro license?
So one of the benefits of riteSCAN is because we're using the embedded e.net, we're actually not using up your Cispro license seat for your normal Cispro. Everything is through the embedded e.net business objects. So if you have multiple users using riteSCAN, it'll take up multiple riteSCAN user seats, but not Cispro.
Awesome, thank you. I hope that answers that for you, Janet. So there are a few more questions here, which I think we'll be able to get in. So if the if the warehouse is in a remote area and no proper network structure, how do you overcome this situation? On a handheld device, can riteSCAN allow end user to add more fields themselves? So be able to add Cispro custom fields. So I think there's more than one question in there.
No worries. So to answer question 1, so currently riteSCAN, we don't cache data. So unfortunately, when you don't have network in some of those remote locations, there's not a way to cache that data and sync it up later. And unfortunately, we haven't went down that road, is just because that really can lead to data validation errors. When you try to sync that up, that inventory might have been consumed in Cispro, and then those transactions aren't able to post. Some people have solved it through, I mean, just the sheer technology through VPNs on the handhelds now and wireless mobile cards and different technologies like that have opened the door for solving some of those remote locations and being able to provide a solution. As for the custom forms, so flipping on to question number 2, there's a lot of transactions within riteSCAN and different modules where, yes, you can definitely bring in that custom form data. Also, a lot of the views and cards that you've seen within riteSCAN are configurable. So if you're wanting to show a specific piece of data that you might not have seen when I was doing the demo, all that can be configured within riteSCAN, and it's very dependent on the module that you're working for through. One of the other features of riteSCAN is we can also actually set up the ability to capture custom forms. I don't know if that's where that question was going or if it was viewing, but for example, we have a customer in the UK where they've set up riteSCAN in the PO receiving process to capture 5 custom form fields for their trucks to go through a truck inspection. So they need to capture the temperature of the truck, did it pass the quality inspection, the truck ID, and 2 other pieces of data. So we actually capture that in the PO receiving process and post that to the Cispro custom form fields. So I hope that answered the question.
Yes, I think it does, but let us know if it didn't. While we're on the topic of temperature, one of the questions is, do the mobile devices, or are they compatible of low temperature operation? So for example, in a cold room, etc.
So it's very dependent on the hardware. So with the hardware that you purchase, you can actually purchase hardware that's specifically built for those sort of freezer environments that is able to withstand that and has different components in it to be able to handle those sorts of environments where they're going from even a warm temperature to a cold temperature to help the screen from completely fogging over as you go through the doors and so on. So there is a lot of different hardware, ruggedized hardware, of course, that can help solve that sort of environmental.
Okay. And gloves, would that be the same kind of response if they're using, if they're in a cold storage environment using gloves?
Yeah, yep, definitely. So those are all some of the different factors that have been taken into account with those devices.
Okay, fantastic. I think we've only got a couple more here. So does the inventory query allow you to view the series number? I think that's what that question is trying to say.
Series or serials?
It says series. I
It's probably
suspect it's,
cereals.
yeah,
Yeah.
I suspect it is
Okay.
serial.
Yeah, so definitely, I didn't show you guys exactly in the demo, but just like lots, so if it's a serialized stock code, you'll notice that there will be an additional tab that turns up for serials. So just like I showed the lot stock code, you would also see serials in that inventory query as well, definitely.
Okay, fantastic. And I think the last one here is, can you apply lot traceability specific only to warehouse with riteSCAN? This question is coming from a person who has a mobile has mobile warehouses that like to do away with the traceability piece. I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, if I'm honest.
Andrew, I think I'm going to take the question because I'm going
Please
to
do.
say it looks like it's a combination of questions. So from a lot
Yeah.
traceability point of view, once you flagged an item as lot traceable, it's a lot traceable item regardless of the warehouse in which it is. Okay, so riteSCAN would not be able to make any changes to that process because it's a Cispro process. So the answer to your question is no, you can't have a warehouse that's flagged as non-traceable if the item has been flagged as traceable. If you're referring to possibly bins, that you want to have a mobile warehouse that doesn't have bins, then yes, you can turn off bins by warehouse in Cispro.
Okay. Okay, I think we're through all the questions, and I hope that answered that question. See, that's what happens. You can tell which one of us has the 27 years of experience with Syspro and the one who doesn't. I won't give out any prizes if you can guess that one right. But I think we're through all the questions. Thank you for everybody who's joined today. We're just a few minutes over the hour, so I think we managed to get most of it in. A very, very special thank you to you, Ryan, and RiteSoft for getting up at the early hours of the morning to do that for us over here on this side of the world. So thank you, Ryan. Thank you, RiteSoft. A special thank you to Jakes and Jade and the team on this side who always do a fantastic job of getting this all together. Finally, this has been recorded. So we've had the opportunity to record this session, and should you need a copy of it, we will send it out to you accordingly. So thanks again. Appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.